Okay, this is a really important one, especially if you're a parent or a caregiver. A nationwide recall has been issued for a popular organic infant formula, and it's being linked to a very serious illness. So let's dive right in and break down exactly what's happening, what you need to know, and most importantly, what you need to do. All right, first things first, the single most critical point. ByHeart has voluntarily recalled all of its infant formula products nationwide. And this isn't just a couple of bad batches. We're talking about everything. The cans, the little single-serve packets. If it says ByHeart, it's part of this recall. So, you're probably asking two big questions right now, right? Why is this happening? And what exactly is infant botulism? That's the illness at the center of all of this. We're going to tackle both of those, starting with how this whole situation unfolded so quickly. You know, this whole thing happened fast, like incredibly fast. So to really get a handle on why the company and the FDA made the calls they did, it helps to look at the timeline and see just how rapidly this investigation escalated. So this story really kicks off back in August. The FDA and the CDC started noticing a little spike in cases of infant botulism. But then, early November hits and things just take off. On November 7th, the FDA tells ByHeart, hey, we see a potential link here. The very next day, ByHeart acts fast, recalling 2 batches just to be safe. But only 3 days after that, on the 11th, they make the huge call to pull everything off the shelves nationwide. Now, let's talk about the why, the health risk that's driving all of this. It's an illness you might have heard of, but for babies, it is particularly dangerous. Infant botulism, it sounds scary, and it is a very serious illness, even though it's rare. It happens when a baby ingests spores from a specific bacteria. Think of them like tiny seeds. In a baby's gut, which isn't fully developed yet, those spores can grow and produce a toxin that attacks the nervous system. And for their little developing bodies, that's just incredibly dangerous. So, as a parent, what do you need to look out for? This is really important. An early sign is often constipation. After that, you might see that your baby isn't feeding well or has a weak suck. Other things to watch for are drooping eyelids, a loss of head control, they might seem kind of floppy, a weak or different sounding cry, or just a general weakness. Health officials are really clear on this. If you see any of these signs, you need to get medical help immediately. Okay, so this is where the story gets really interesting and, frankly, a little puzzling because there's a huge disconnect between what the lab tests are showing and what the public health data is screaming at investigators. Get this. Both ByHeart and the FDA have been testing sealed, unopened cans and packets of the formula, and they have not found the bacteria. Not once. So the product itself, sitting on the shelf, hasn't actually tested positive for the contaminant. Which leads to the obvious question, right? If you can't find the bacteria in the product, why on earth would you recall everything? Well, the answer isn't in a lab test. It's in the statistics. 15, that's the number that changed everything. That's the number of infants who either had or were suspected to have botulism and were also confirmed to have been fed ByHeart formula. And this chart just lays out the statistical problem perfectly. Look, ByHeart is a small player in the formula game. They have less than 1% of the entire US market. It's tiny. Yet, those 15 cases, they make up about 18% of all the cases in this outbreak. When you have a product with less than 1% of the market tied to 18% of the illnesses, that is a massive statistical red flag that you just cannot ignore. And here's the official word straight from the FDA, which sums it all up. They said, ByHeart brand formula is disproportionately represented among sick infants in this outbreak. So it was that powerful statistical connection, not a contaminated can, that triggered this huge recall. And honestly, that's a pretty big deal in how these public health decisions get made. Okay, with all that context, let's get to the most important part of all of this, the clear, simple steps that parents and caregivers need to take right now. The guidance from everyone involved is direct and simple. 1. Immediately stop using any and all ByHeart formula. Just stop. 2. Safely get rid of it. 3. Keep a really close eye on your child for any of those symptoms we just talked about. And 4. If any of those symptoms pop up, you call your healthcare provider right away. Don't hesitate. Now, I know a lot of us have flashbacks to the huge formula shortages from a few years ago, but here's some reassuring news. Because ByHeart has such a small slice of the market, again, less than 1%, officials and experts do not expect this recall to cause another nationwide shortage. So that is one thing we hopefully don't have to worry about. All right, we have covered a lot of ground, so let's just quickly boil it all down to the most important things you need to walk away with. Okay, here's what to remember. First, all ByHeart formula is recalled, the whole lineup. Second, this is happening because of a really strong link in the data, even though they haven't found the bacteria in the formula itself. Third, infant botulism is serious, so make sure you know those symptoms. And finally, the most important thing you can do is stop using the product right now. And that kind of leaves us with this one big, thought-provoking question. This case is pretty unique. An entire product line has been pulled from shelves based on data, not a contaminant found in a lab. So as we look to the future, what does a recall like this tell us about the power of statistical evidence in protecting public health, even before we find the smoking gun? It's a major new chapter in the world of food safety.
Thanks for sticking with us through this important breakdown. All the information we used for this explainer came directly from the sources you see on your screen. Stay safe and stay informed.